So here's the thing. We've got a target now set by the federal government that has been locked into the integrated system plan in all its scenarios of 82% renewable energy by 2030, all right? And that target, that requires more than doubling the amount of renewable energy. We've got to add something like, I think I looked at about 80 gigawatts of generation and storage capacity to get there in the next 5 years now, right? So this is completely impossible. And the question is where does that number come from? Where does this 82% renewable energy target come from? Well, it came from the same place that $275 came from, that promise that that was going to come off your power bill. This was not something that's independently determined by the experts. It was from a commissioned report from the Labor Party before they won office.
The most reliable research ever undertaken by anybody, according to the now Prime Minister.
Well, that's
what he said about it.
This is the Reputex report, right? And and it was meant to be a projected outcome of policy. It wasn't the policy. They said, we're going to adopt the policy of basically giving some cheaper capital to build transmission. And if we do that, it's called Rewiring Australia, right? So if we do that rewiring policy, then the industry will follow on and will build it this fast, right? And their projected outcomes, and they're in the same table with the same numbers from the same analysis, says outcomes of policy will be, we'll hit 82% by 2030, and you've got $275 off your power bill by 2025. Well, guess what? It's 2025 right now, and this $275 number is the absolute laughingstock of the policy debate in Australia, and yet its twin, its sibling, that has no better analysis behind it than the same people in the same report, has been elevated to become essentially the cornerstone of our most important planning document. Now the integrated system plan does not consider any scenario where that is not met, not achieved, right? So we've basically totally divorced our regulatory planning process from reality because we know we can't hit that target. It's got nothing credible behind it. And the thing that I think has really changed in my mind the debate and why we need to re-ask the question about what are our experts doing is this decision to put 82% as a binding constraint where all our modelling assumes that this impossible target will be reached. We'd been told in all the consultation processes for over a year that the market operator had their hands tied. The rules bound them to actually to say you have to consider government policy and therefore we couldn't possibly include an alternative baseline or do any other scenario. None of which I buy, of course. But the thing that has really, I think, broken trust now is that we've had freedom of information requests put in by the Centre for Independent Studies and tabled and discussed in Senate estimates that show that that is not the case. The market operator planned and proposed to leave this renewable share a free variable. So some scenarios might hit it, some might not. And they were basically given an instruction and expressed preference from the department to say that, no, we would prefer that it's a binding constraint on all scenarios. So, and the market operator has simply rolled over and accepted basically the government's insistence that their totally ridiculous number of 82% be treated as gospel in our planning documents. And I think that that really absolutely erodes the trust we have in the supposedly independent organisations because they're plainly not acting independent of government. They are acting as though the government's wishes will be reality in every possible version of the future. And so they've cut out the baseline. We have no ability to compare what this cost will be, no ability to see what a more realistic scenario might actually look like. And we're being railroaded into spending huge amounts of money prematurely on the blind assumption, the blind faith assumption that this Reputex number is good and will be achieved. But we actually know that it's no better than the $275, which is plainly not been achieved. So I think that's a disaster for our planning situation and a huge blow to the credibility and trust we have in our institutions because we're being misled.